go through these dungeons, we try to take a look and use monsters that haven't necessarily been seen all that much. So like the Wisp Mother is a good example, which she just hadn't been seen all that much, and definitely hadn't been seen in a trial situation. So we took a look at that and to see. They didn't particularly have a ton of animation, so we had to rely on kind of what she did and then just pump it up so that she has the raining stars that fall down and do a lot of damage, and then she splits apart and stuff like that. But in that regard, it's taking a look at what they have and then just adapting it. We also don't, when we have animations, we don't want to change the nature of what the boss is doing. So if the Wisp Mother will, throw her arms up in the air and it'll call down a spell or something like that, we don't want to change that to be like a fireball that she fires out, because it'd be completely different and people wouldn't expect that. So generally, when players see a boss or a monster, they know kind of like, oh, well, these are kind of what it's going to do, and then we just try to jack it up to make it more damaging.
So I'd like to see a big werewolf.
A big werewolf. A big werewolf with that. Yeah. So I know we've done. So some of those bosses, when we talk about that, are we try to stay away from stuff that's seen too much, kind of in the overland and stuff like that. So we have an entire quest line in Glenumbra where you go through and you fight werewolves, and then you fight Valkyrie and stuff like that. Now, we try to avoid doing that because they kind of use a lot of the animations and stuff like that, and design-wise, it doesn't leave us a lot of room to kind of go and stuff like that. That being said,
The werewolf that could climb
so that being said, it's not a bad idea to suggest like even a werewolf dungeon. We have to take a look at the monsters throughout the dungeon that we're going to use. So this is why you probably see a lot of, so the monsters that have the most animations are going to be humanoid monsters, because they have all the player animations and they have all these other animations that we've added and stuff like that. So they just have the most diversity. So a lot of times when you take a look at a dungeon, you're going to see a lot of humanoids because they have the most diverse set of animations that we can add stuff to. So like an entire dungeon of werewolves might be a little bit lean with what they could possibly do, but throwing them in as like big baddies or something like that is probably definitely something you need to look at. So he gets half a shirt.
Thank you. Do we want to go ahead with the Wisp Mother?
Yeah, we could go ahead with the Wisp Mother. What was that?
He's talking about the paper clock used by some to fight against theirs.
Using gods is generally not good. So in that regard, it really depends on the god that you use. If you take a look at somebody like Vivek or somebody like that, or even Malakath or something like that, you could take a look at Molik Ball. Molik Ball is a good example because that was a completely unique monster that we designed. But like, if you take a look at Malakath or Vivek or something like that, those are very much on a humanoid rig, so we could probably do something similar to that. And then the diversity you get with that would be the skin that would be put on the monster, so that it would look like Vivek or Malakath or something like that, have a unique head or something like that. But you still get all the animations of the humanoid, and we can do some pretty crazy cool stuff with that. Usually in that case you wouldn't actually fight the god. I think the only god in our game you actually fight is Molik Ball, but you could fight like an avatar of Malakath. No, it's not. Of course, it's not actually Molik Ball, but like you could fight an avatar of Malakath or something. Oh, you mean Aether gods? Okay. Yeah.
At that point, probably
yeah, and like I have a certain space that I can go to, and a lot of times our original zone design doc where we try to like really like, oh, I want to fight this, and then like you can't fight that. So we try to keep our stories, and not to mention that in a dungeon generally. We try to keep the stories really, really self-contained. So the story of the dungeon starts when you enter the dungeon, and then you go through, and then it wraps around, and that ends in that dungeon. So a story of an aged god coming into the planet world would not just be a dungeon. You don't walk in and it's like, oh, by the way, this guy is over here and going to destroy the entire world. Can you stop that? And then by the end of the dungeon, you're like, yeah, we're all done with that. That's good. Yeah, it is possible, but it's like one of those things that like that would have bigger ramifications outside of the world that we would probably want to look into or something like that. So.
Talking about Twilight Wind.
With Twilight.
With Twilight, flying boss.
Flying bosses, we can generally do. It would probably work better a little bit with the Daedric Titan because that one has. So whenever we want to take a look at that, and we would take a look at a monster that can fly, you have to build a certain set of animations and stuff like that that are designed for the monster to be constantly flying and moving around, stuff like that. The Daedric Titan is a good example of, we have a lot of passive animations that would actually be able to be used. So like if you look at when you go into White Gold Tower or something like that, or even Imperial City, if you look up, you'll see Daedric Titans flying around and stuff like that. That means that those animations are in game and we could possibly use them. The concern there, and the main concern that we would have is if you have a flying monster, is we still have to take a look at the roles that all the players are going to go into in the game, and we don't want to create a situation where a monster can only be beaten by ranged, or a monster can only be beaten by melee. So if it's a flying monster, it's not bad to say there's a flying monster for a particular phase. For instance, so like this phase is going to just jump in the air and fly around, and melee doesn't have anything to do, but maybe there's ballistas around or something like that they can go interact with to bring it back down or something like that. So that's definitely a concern that we would have, but a flying monster as part of a phase is definitely something that we could take a look at doing.
We'll take one more suggestion, and then we have to move on.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll miss the deadline for the next update.
All right.
Living free, similar to the end.
Right, I know. Yeah, Spriggans would work in that regard. Spriggans have a weird animation set in that they don't have feet, so they kind of just like move along the ground and stuff. But they have some pretty interesting stuff. I like that's not a bad suggestion, and I know that we're taking a look at Spriggans for something. So I would rather go with Daedric Titan, and I like the idea of a flying phase and a ground phase. So we'll go with Daedric Titan with a ground phase and a flying phase for the boss. So when we take a look at that, and my designer comes and says, or you guys in this case, come and say, hey, this is what I want. I want a Daedric Titan that flies and it has a ground phase. So in that regard, we take a look and we say, okay, what are the roles that we have in a dungeon? So we have 4 different roles that we have in the dungeon. We have tank, we have melee DPS, we have ranged DPS, and we have healer. And we have to take a look at, in all of these phases of the fight, it's the question we ask all the time is, what is each one of these roles doing? What is the tank doing? What is it doing? So when on the ground phase, the tank is probably going to be tanking the boss. So we take a look at melee DPS, and a lot of times in melee DPS and ranged DPS will probably be along the same lines. They don't need to be doing some separate things. They can always be doing kind of the same thing. They're just DPS, and then the healer, what does the healer do? But a lot of times, in order to spice it up and to move it, we say, okay, well, let's give the tank something else to do, or let's give the ranged DPS or the melee DPS to do. A good example of that is in White Gold Tower, the planar inhibitor, where that doesn't even have a tank phase. That is just, well, whoever hits the pinion is tanking, but for the most part, it's you guys are just running around with like chickens with your heads cut off, so it's like everybody trying to do everything. So that was a conscious design to kind of break the paradigm that we had. So if we take a look at the Titan, I would instantly take a look at the phase that we would really have to define as what people are doing, because the ground phase, we know what everybody's doing, but what is the tank and the melee DPS going to do in the flying phase? if the Danger Titan is flying around and launching fireballs at people and everybody's avoiding stuff, what is everybody that can't range DPS? What are they doing?